Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing to the channel or becoming a patron at patreon.com/Afterlife Topics. Hey everybody, this is Cyrus, and before we begin this interview, I just wanted to mention that this is one of the most detailed near-death experiences that I have ever come across, and it answers many of the pressing questions concerning what will our literal conditions be like when we leave the earthly experience. So it's a big piece of the puzzle, trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together about the afterlife, which is what this channel is all about. So I hope you enjoy the interview. I would recommend taking notes, maybe coming back to this interview for reference, because I know I certainly will. With that said, I'll go ahead and switch to the interview. I hope you guys like it. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus, and today we have a guest, John Davis from Colorado Springs. He works in finance, a self-described regular guy who had a profound near-death experience. Of course, that's something that we love to talk about on this show, is where we go when we cross over. And near-death experiences are one of the best ways to find insight into the other side, other planes of existence. I have not heard John's story before. I've heard really good things about it, so I'm excited to listen to what happened to him. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to John. John, how are you doing tonight?
Hi, Cyrus. I'm doing great. It's great to be here with you all.
Well, it's great to have you. And so I guess we'll just start from the top, whatever you're comfortable with. If you want to tell us your story for the listeners here at Afterlife Topics, and yeah, if you want to just take it away.
Sure. Yeah, I'll tell my whole story from the beginning. My near-death experience happened when I was 21. I was riding a scooter, or what was called back then a moped, and I was turning a right corner, and as soon as I turned the right corner, there was a squirrel in the middle of the road. So I went to avoid it, and I crashed into a tree. And I landed in such a way that I had all the tendons of my right hand pulled off my bone. So I had to go in to have surgery to correct the tears and get the tendons reattached. Well, I had never had surgery before. I never even had much any time in a hospital really, so I had no idea what to expect. So I went into the hospital that day waiting for the surgery, and they gave me the anesthesia, and I had an allergic reaction to the anesthesia, and it actually stopped my heart, and I died on the table. What happened after that is the part that totally changed how the direction of my life was going to go. Before this experience, I had always had a fear of death. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was terrified of the idea, and I just kind of avoided it to cope with it. So I had this very strong fear of dying. And at the time, I was raised a Catholic, but I wasn't really practicing Catholicism. We'd stopped going to the church when I was about 13. That's a little bit of background. Well, I was on the table and my heart stopped. I could feel my eyes close. And a second later, I opened up my eyes and I was in the most beautiful, extraordinary building I had ever seen. It looked like it was made of absolutely perfect, beautiful white marble. And it was like a corridor, this huge corridor that I could see as far down as I could see. It kept going. It kept going for miles and miles. And the corridor was on the right hand side. Try to imagine this if you can. I know it's hard to visualize this. On the right hand side where I was standing, there were columns, beautiful white marble columns, just like you would see in Greece or Rome, that kind of building. And these columns went all the way down the right hand side. They were probably about 10 feet apart. To the very left of where I was standing were all of these doorways or all of these tunnels, and it looked like they were cut out of solid marble. It was absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. Right in front of every single one of these tunnels or these doorways were marble tables, and they had 4 seats on each side of these tables. And as far down as I could see, each one of these tables had 2 people sitting on them, either two men, 2 women, or a man and a woman were sitting at these tables. And I have to back up a little bit. At the time this happened, I had no idea what a spirit guide was. I had never heard the term before, didn't know what it meant. And I had a spirit guide who was with me, who was telling me everything that I was seeing and everything that I was going to see. And he was talking to me through my left ear. So, what he told me, he said I was in an orientation room or an orientation where people who have crossed over, who have died, who have crossed over and are coming through the white light and through the doorway past the tunnel into this orientation center. So my guide said, look out the first door, or look at the first column and look out and tell me what you see. As I looked over, I could look out this column or look out of this doorway, and I could see space. I could see galaxies. It was absolutely magical. And then my guide said, look at the next doorway. So I looked over to the next doorway, and there was a man who had stepped through that doorway, and he was holding his chest. He had his right hand and he was holding his left chest, and he had had a heart attack. And my guide said that he died because he had a heart attack on Earth. So as he went through this, and incidentally, that's something that I didn't have. When I died on that operating table, I didn't have the same thing that a lot of people have when they have their near death experiences. I didn't see a white light and I didn't see a tunnel. It was almost like I was transported on the other side of that when I was just all of a sudden on the other side when
So
I
did
died.
so the guide had mentioned to you that this is what happens after the light, after the tunnel. Did you say that? Was I?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in fact, when people see the white light is these tunnel openings that the light streams through when people leave their bodies and they die. So anyway, this man stepped over. He was probably in his 80s. He was an elderly gentleman, and my guide said he had died of a heart attack. So one of the women that was at this table stood up, one of these orientation counselors. She stood up, she walked over to him and she grabbed him by the hands and she guided him over to her table, and they sat down across from each other. And she was holding his hands the entire time. What my guide said was that orientation counselors are used because when people come back from a lifetime, many times they don't remember having left the other side in the first place and don't remember coming back from an and don't remember what happens when they leave their bodies and come back to the other side. So she was holding his hands, talking to him about what he had just finished.
If I can interrupt for a second,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
did she look like? What did the counselors look like? Do you remember their physical appearance at all?
She had there were 2 of them. They both were wearing white robes or tunics. One of the women had long black hair and the other woman had cropped red hair. And the one who was talking to him was the one that had cropped red hair. And that's what I remember about her. But what I mostly remember is I could see the back of him, and I was probably 20 feet away. I was too far away to hear what she was saying. But as she was talking to him, my guide said, look at his appearance. So I was watching him as she was talking to him, and right before my eyes, he began to change. He changed from a man of 80 years old to a man who was in his late 20s or early 30s, because that's the appearance that we have on the other side. That's our normal appearance when we're home. Yeah, it's okay.
So he
Yeah, he had a
passed
heart
away in his
attack.
80s, and then he almost immediately began transforming into a young age again.
Exactly. Exactly. When she was talking to him, she was telling him he had finished his life. He'd had a heart attack. He's back on the other side. And when he had that memory again, he started to switch back to what he became and what he was like on the other side ordinarily. So once that was over, he stood up and he walked off to the right of where these columns were. He walked down 3 steps into what I can only describe as the most absolutely incredible garden I have ever seen in my entire life. It was absolutely beautiful. Plants that I had never seen before, trees, flowers were absolutely magnificent in their color. And what was happening is in this garden, there were probably 30 or 40 people who were there in a semicircle around him. These are the people that had passed from his lifetime that had died and who were on the other side waiting for him to come through. And it became like this huge reunion. It was absolutely amazing to watch this. And at the time, I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know that I had died and that I was actually talking to a spirit guide. None of this came to my knowledge until after the whole experience. Does it make sense though that what was happening? Can you visualize this man coming through this tunnel, having died from a heart attack, and then here he is now talking to orientation counselors who help him remember who he really is after his life.
Yeah, and what's really important already, but what you're describing is that you have these details down, and so sometimes people, when they go to the other side, it's almost like they're not paying attention to the idea of other people who have crossed over. That's a question people get. It's like if you have a near-death experience, where are all the other people crossing over? Well, you were at that point, you were at that orientation, so you had the chance to see that, to see other people coming in and how they were being taken care of. At this point, do you have any memory of how you were physically? Were you breathing? Did you not have to breathe? Was any of the communication verbal? Was it all telepathic?
You know
Like
what?
what your senses? How was all of that?
The way that he was talking to me, I looked, I could see him. He was standing next to me, my guide. He had olive skin, he had dark curly hair, and I could actually hear him talking into my left ear. It was like he was right there. I had a body, but it was better than the earth body. I guess it's called an astral body,
Yeah,
but it's solid and it's stronger than my earth body was.
yeah, you feel a lot healthier in that body for sure.
Yeah, a
And
lot healthier, a lot lighter and stronger.
but did you find yourself, were you breathing, or were you not able to tell if that was happening or not?
I actually don't remember that at all.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't remember.
maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not, but that was only the first part. The rest of it, I might be able to tell you more detail when I get to the rest of it. But so he met all these people, and then those were people that he had known is in his lifetime that had crossed before him, and they were just congratulating him on him finishing his life. It was just remarkable to see. And then what happened is my guide started taking me to all these different places on the other side. It was like he wanted to give me a mini tour of what this place looked like. And what he did is he showed me the outside of all of these buildings first. So he showed me the outside and then he showed me the inside afterwards. So the very first building, that one that was called the Orientation Center, it looked like a temple that you'd find in Greece. with all the columns. It was absolutely just breathtaking. The next thing he took me to was the outside of a building that looked like the Roman Pantheon. And I don't know if you all remember what that looks like, but the Pantheon is the domed building. It's got a big dome on top, and it has columns around it in a circle. That's exactly what this building looked like, a dome top with columns all around the whole circle. So we walked in this Pantheon building, he told me, is where people choose and write down their lives. It's where you go with your spirit guide to determine what kind of life you're going to have next. And it's very, very detailed. I had no idea that this is what happened, but people actually plan their lives. They plan who their parents are going to be. They plan what school they're going to go to. They plan what country they're going to move into. They plan what kind of career they're going to have. And they even plan when they're going to leave the earth. And how I know this is so extraordinary because we walked in and the building was just gigantic and there were people everywhere and people were working on their lifetime, their upcoming lifetime, and they write them down on scrolls or parchment paper. So I walked over to this table and he showed me that there were two scrolls on the table. One had a blue ribbon and the other one had a red ribbon around it. Well, I picked up the blue one and I unwrapped it and I rolled it out on the table in front of me. And I could see immediately that it was written in calligraphy. You know that old kind of writing where you'd have to have an inkwell, you'd put the pen in ink and then write, put the pen back in ink and let you write some more? It was very formal. And as soon as I began to read this, I wanted to see what this was. It turned out it was my life chart. And as soon as I tried to read it, the whole parchment folded back up. And my guide said I wasn't able to read that because I was still in that lifetime. And if I had read what was on there, I wouldn't necessarily have taken and passed the tests that I had set for myself in life. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions about that
Yeah,
part?
I have a question, and it's like I have a feeling that that scroll, like it's text, but there has to be some kind of an imprint on it that's energetic. Like you're not just reading the text. It must be like, because I would imagine it's more complicated for a whole lifetime to be condensed into just one piece of calligraphy, right? Like it would
Yeah.
have to, like I'm guessing that these scrolls have some kind of an energetic function, or else they wouldn't they just use an automated system or like an electronic system and put it all in a Microsoft Word document, you know?
Yeah.
It seems like it's too
Yeah.
much information to be in a scroll. What do you think?
I think you're right. You're absolutely correct. Because my guide had said that people plan their lives. Some people plan their lives in incredible detail where they do choose their parents. They choose every aspect of that life, where they're going to go to school, if they're going to be a male or a female, what they want to accomplish, what trials they want to take on, where they're going to be born, what they're going to do for a career. All of these things can be part of someone's chart. But there are also people who don't have that much kind of detail. They just go in without a lot of structure to their lifetimes. So I don't know how much I actually planned
So it
because it
may be an
wasn't.
individual basis, as some people may have planned their life out to every detail, and then some people they're just going to wing it.
Yes, that's exactly what I got.
That makes a lot of sense, right? Because some people in this life, they're like, they're really opposed to this idea of people planning their life out. And they're like, my life is not planned at all. They really don't think it was planned. Maybe it wasn't planned. So I don't think the afterlife is one size fits all. There might be certain personalities who do decide to get every detail down on something. So that makes a lot of sense. I also wonder about if, well, this might be a difficult one to answer, but it's just like when you're in that realm, and this is what we would call an astral realm because it was a real physical, tangible environment. It wasn't like a dreamlike or a spectral or
Right.
non-physical existence. And so when you're in that existence, I wonder if a soul, if an individual, like, do they still look like themselves before they're born? Like, is their life there, the primary one, and then this becomes or that becomes a template for the life that they're going to lead here? Like, did I wonder if John Davis looked like John Davis, or some interpretation of how you look now, and then you decided to be incarnated here, and then you look like John Davis again? Who knows? I don't know if that's possible to answer, but it's something I'm curious about.
I I didn't get the impression that I was going to look the same on a particular lifetime. If that's kind of what you mean, like when you would chart a life, you chart who your parents are going to be, and then you chart what their chromosomes and genes are going to help you become. If you wanted to become a sprinter, for example, or some kind of an athlete, you'd want to choose athletic parents. But I don't know if I would be able to see what I'd look like before. Was that kind of your question?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I mean, there's a lot of mysteries wrapped up in this whole subject, including
Yeah.
why somebody does decide to come to Earth in the first place. Let's say somebody wanted to become a sprinter. Is there a benefit when you transition back into that world if you incarnate in this world and you have a certain genetic background that you decide to create for yourself, and then you cross over again? I wonder if there's a practical reason that people do that. Maybe they want to have that genetic disposition going into the astral world too. Like, I don't know. It's that to me is a mystery. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't get anything like that at all. All I got was that, our home is on the other side. That's our real home. That's our true existence where we are for eternity. And that people come to the earth for the reasons of learning lessons and to experience things, because the other side is absolutely beautiful and perfect. And it's hard to understand what it's like to learn something. And maybe one of the lessons you chose in your lifetime was to learn about compassion or to become more caring for somebody. And so that could be part of your major life reason for coming in. But I don't know if when you come back, you're going to have any particular advantages. Or I think your whole goal is, when you come back, is to see if you worked on what you wanted to learn when you had that life in the first place. And there's also, even though you write a chart, you still have free will when you come into a lifetime. You can still decide to make choices. But I'm only just a little way into my story. I'm sure you're going to have a lot more questions.
Okay, I don't mean to hold us up at the beginning mark. So where else did you go on the tour of
The
this
next the
plane?
next place after I saw that Pantheon, well, actually, let me back up. I want to share with something. When I was in that building where you were writing your charts, everybody has a spirit guide, and your spirit guide typically is somebody who is able to work with you, who knows you much better than other people do, and know the kind of things that you want to work on. So your spirit guide helps you plan your lifetime. Well, when I was standing inside that building, I looked off to my left, and there was this huge, gigantic, beautiful window that led to the outside. And I looked out there, and I could see an absolutely beautiful lake. It was pristine, it was perfect, it was just the most beautiful lake I'd ever seen. And it had weeping willow trees all around the whole round part of this lake. And I could look over and I could see the water. The water was so crystal clear that I could see the bottom. And outside, there were people walking back and forth, going places. The other side, where I was, it was really busy there. And I noticed that people were wearing gowns or tunics or robes of some kind. And I asked my guide at the time, why are they wearing those? And he said, that's because it's the most comfortable to wear. But people can wear jeans, they can wear anything they want, but most people tend to wear tunics and robes.
Well, it's probably a bit of peer pressure too. It's like everyone's wearing a tunic but John, and he's wearing blue jeans. Come on, get with the program.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. And I did see some people wearing jeans too. Well, the next place he took me to, it was another gigantic building, and it looked very much like the Roman Parthenon. It didn't have columns on the side, but it had the columns in the front of it, with many stairs leading up to the front of this building. So I walked in, and I didn't know what it was until I got through the doors. It was a huge, huge library. I can't even describe how large this library was. It was enormous. And again, just like the orientation center, I couldn't see an end to it. That's how long it was. So we walked in, and there must have been bookshelves that were 20 or 30 feet high and had books, more books than I ever even imagined existed in the world. It was absolutely this huge, enormous library. And there were people everywhere. There were people walking, there were people sitting, some people were studying, other people were visiting with other people. It was just a huge hub of activity. So he showed me the library, and he said that anything you want to see or anything that you're looking for, you just have to think about it, and you'll automatically go right to that place that had the books you're looking for. I was so blown away. So we have the ability to use thought to move from one place to another, which was the whole physics is completely different. But then he took me over to the left-hand side of the library. You know how in libraries today we have rooms that are off to the side where you can study or have a private conference with somebody? This library had something similar to that. They had rooms that you could step down. You'd step down 3 steps into like a sunken living room, you could say, off the library, off to the main library. And they had these rooms there. And there was a woman who was sitting in this on a couch. See if you can visualize this with me. There was a room, there was a kind of a dark couch. She was wearing a purple gown, and she had long, straight, jet black hair. And she was watching what we would say was some kind of a video or some kind of a television show. And my guide said, go get closer to see what's going on. So I walked closer, and I could see that she was watching a battle. She was watching a, a fight of the American cavalry versus the Native Americans, the Plains Wars. And I thought she was watching some kind of a movie. And my guide said, no, what she's watching is actual reality. She was watching a battle that had happened 200 years ago. And we were able to actually see it. There are these rooms you can go into. You can go into the past. So she wanted to research that particular era of the Earth's history. And they do it with chips, some kind of little microchips they have that they can put in this machine that allows them to view and see history. Because I was thinking to myself, nobody had video cameras back then. How in the world is it possible that she's watching a live battle? Somehow, God, the creator, is able to make things so that nothing gets forgotten or that everything is recorded. That's what I got very strongly from this particular place, was that everything is recorded and you can go back and see it again.
Like this like akashic technology. And did so they but they saw it on a screen. So
Yes.
what did the screen look like? Was it a big screen TV, a flat
Yeah.
screen, just a glass, like a glass projector, or what?
It looked like a big flat screen TV. That's what it looked like. And she was watching this, and it was in such explicit detail to be it's the first time I had ever seen anything like that, watching something real that had happened in the past. And here's something else. This is the part that really blew me away. How many of you remember the what is it? The Star Trek episodes where they had the oh, you know what they
The
the
holodeck?
holodecks, the holodeck. Do you all remember seeing something like that on Star Trek, the holodeck?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What the other side has is the ability to not only see history as it happened in that room that she was in, but you can actually step into living history through those rooms. So if you had always had a passion that you wanted to go see Normandy, France during World War II, and you wanted to see what it looked like, there's a way that it's been created by God, because everything's been recorded, that you can walk in and step into real live history and see it, smell it, touch it, experience it. It was absolutely breathtaking.
Big question about that is it like the holodeck where well, it's kind of created version of it where you are able to meet and talk to people who are like programs, or I wonder if you're like a ghost who just kind of is able to observe but they don't see you.
The impression I had was that you wouldn't be able to interact with anybody. You were more like a ghost.
Yeah, that makes sense because you're entering into a virtual representation, or you go into the virtual representation of what she's looking at on the screen. Of course, with actually in some ways, I guess the holodeck is still a level beyond that, where you can, you are interacting with computer technology that mimics those persons, but maybe they have that too. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. I just had the very distinct feeling that they wouldn't let you. You couldn't interact with anybody because it could change history, but you could certainly go there and see what those people felt like, what they looked like, what they were doing, to get a very, very detailed look about what that experience was. And anything that you wanted to research, you could do so in these rooms off the library. One of the biggest things about the other side is that there's a huge hunger for knowledge. People on the other side, they love to learn and they love to experience. There are so many things to learn over there. And they have these libraries that are dedicated to certain types of skills. They have libraries where you can go to on music, and you can look up any kind of music that has ever happened on the earth before. Whether you like jazz or you like the blues or you like pop rock, you can go in there and study. They have these libraries for that. They have libraries for literature, poetry, architecture, anything that you want to go study, you can go and study there.
And John, do you think all of that relates just to the Earth? Because I sometimes wonder, it's like the other side is also, which should be anyway, a big vibrant world with its own stuff going on. Would it be possible for somebody to step back into something that happened before on the other side, or is it just exclusively to look into things from Earth's history?
You know what? From what I understood, it was just Earth's history. Yeah, the one I went into a little bit was the Literature Museum, and they had books just from Earth's history, Earth's writers. But that opens up a whole other can that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes too.
Great. Well, I'll let you continue on.
Okay, cool. Any of you have any questions yet?
We'll open up to the patrons to ask questions if we can get to like a finish point. If we can't finish the whole thing, you could potentially have you come back on next time.
Okay.
But we'll see if we can get to a finish point, then we'll open up to patrons to ask questions. Or else,
Okay.
if we open up to patrons right now, then that'll be the whole rest of the night. So I'll let you
Okay.
continue on.
Okay. Well, I'll keep going. I've got some more to cover then for you all. So after he showed me the huge library with the viewing room and showed me the lady who was sitting there watching that, her whole objective was she wanted to watch that particular era of history, because my guide said she wanted to learn about what happened during the Plains Wars during the times of the 1800s on the Earth plane. That's not to say that these videos couldn't look at other realities. She was just looking at the one from the Earth in the 1800s. So once he showed me that, he took me to another building. And this is where I really learned that people on the other side, one of the greatest joys they have is to experience things. There's this whole influence about learning, continuing to grow your soul, to become more spiritual, to become closer to God. Everybody is on this path. That's why they come into life, to learn more, to develop, and to grow. So the next building that he showed me was a castle. And this castle from the outside was absolutely enormous. It was a huge, enormous castle, just like the ones you would find in England. So we walked in, and I was immediately struck by the red carpet. All through this castle, there was red carpet, just like you would see, just like you would expect a castle to look like. And my guide told me that all the castles on Earth are reproduced on the other side. They were actually produced first on the other side, and then craftsmen built those castles hundreds of years ago on the Earth. So any castle you want to go visit, you could go visit on the other side for the sole purpose of learning about that particular time in history. Earth's history is so vast and so long, thousands of years, that they have these different places you can go to learn about the history. It's almost like having an adult Harry Potter experience. You had all of these places you could go that were wondrous and just breathtakingly fantastic. So I walked inside the castle, and just to the left of me was this huge castle wall. And on the wall were these life-size paintings of the kings and the queens and the princes and the princesses who had lived in this castle during its years of when they were running in castles. So it could have been 200 years. And they had every king and queen painted life-size and what they were wearing. In front of each one of these paintings, there was a podium or a lectern, and the podium or the lectern had a book on it. And there must have been 20 different podiums for all of these different paintings that went down on the left-hand side of this wall. And I didn't know what these were. I thought they looked like Bibles, but they weren't Bibles. What they were is, if you wanted to come into that library or to that castle and you had a particular interest in looking up King Henry VIII, for example, or Queen Elizabeth, you could take that book and you could flip through it, and you would see every single thing about her life that she lived as that queen. What happened to her when she was a girl, how she grew up. It even had details about conversations. And I think that was because they were making decisions that would affect the public, that would affect their people. And so even their exact conversations are recorded in these books. And it's almost like it was a book of life. Not everybody had these books like that, but it seemed like people who were in positions of power seemed to have these books where you could read through. And here's the most remarkable part about this whole thing now. As I was looking at these books, I looked off to my right, and there was a circular staircase. And as I looked over there, there was a woman who was walking down this circular staircase. You know how the castles have the towers, and they have the circular staircases to get to the next floor? She was walking down, and she had strawberry blonde hair. She was in her 30s, and she was wearing a red gown with a gold tunic and some kind of red-looking sandals. And even to this day, I still kick myself when I think about this. What do we say when we walk into a retail store and we're just looking around. This woman walked up to me and she said, "Hey there, is there anything I can help you find?" Well, I was so blown away. I had no idea where I was. And I said, "No, thank you. I'm just looking around." And I thought to myself, that's the stupidest thing. How could I possibly say I'm just looking around? I could have asked this person what was going on. Where am I? I was just in an operating room. What is this place? Am I dead? Who are you? Is there a God? All of these, I could have asked all of these questions and I didn't even think about it. But her job is she was a scholar of this particular Earth's history. She loved the kings and the queens and the castles, and she loved studying that on the other side. And what I found out from that was that people do have jobs that they do, but they do them differently than they do here. Here on the Earth plane, you have to work to pay bills, to put food on the table, to pay your mortgage or your rent, to pay your car payment. None of that exists on the other side. It's almost like you can take the gifts that God gave you and you can run with them on the other side and develop them and to find out your potential. So this girl, her passion in life was to be a student of castles and the medieval times, and she was to help people become educated about that particular time in Earth's history. So
Yeah,
that was
I
the
mean, it's fun. I mean, I've talked to like waitresses on the other side who have said, "Well, I'm like, why are you a waitress?" And they're like, "Well, I like food, I like meeting, and hanging around people, and I like this restaurant when I used to work there on Earth." You know,
yeah, yeah, exactly. And every kind of thing you could possibly imagine is there. People are painters, people are architects, people are carpenters, people are gardeners. Every single thing you can possibly imagine they do there just for the sake of loving to do it.
except no one's in finance. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, there's
Maybe
probably
there.
there's no mutual funds. I don't think there's no stock trading, nothing like that.
I mean, there actually probably is these micro, communities, worlds, especially on the kind of Earth, very Earth-like astral levels. Unfortunately, I think there may still be a financial world, but who knows? But anyway,
Yeah,
I don't mean to cut you off. So,
no.
okay, so from that point, so what happened next?
Okay. After I saw the castle building, this was my most favorite part of this whole experience. And the thing that was so strange about this is I was clinically dead for less than 7 minutes. But everything that happened, I felt like I had been there for hours on the other side because of everything they showed me. It was really a strange dynamic. The next thing he took me to was a building that looked like a stadium from the outside, a huge, enormous sports stadium. So we walked inside and it was completely empty, thousands and thousands of seats. And what this was a planetarium. You know, when you can go and you can sit down and they can put on different things on the ceiling about space and things like that. Well, this planetarium, I walked in and another voice, it was a male voice, started talking to me. And he said, "Okay, we're ready. Go ahead and sit down and we'll get the lights." So I sat down, they turned the lights off, and I looked up at the ceiling. This other voice said to me, said, "When you look at the stars, this is what you see." And he wasn't just talking about me by myself, he was talking about all of humanity, everybody on Earth. When they look at the stars, this is what they see. And all of a sudden, different pictures of our solar system started showing up on the top. It showed Jupiter, it showed Saturn, it showed Uranus, Neptune, it showed Mars, it showed all of our planets. And then it disappeared. He next said, When we look at the stars, meaning everybody on the other side, this is what we see. And all of a sudden, hundreds of planets started showing up. Hundreds and thousands of planets that were blue, yellow, brown, green, red, thousands upon thousands of planets. And he said there are millions and millions of planets in the universe, and there's far more life than you know. Or no, he said there's far more life than you can possibly know that exists in the universe. And he also told me in that there are other places that we can go to have lifetimes. Earth is not the only planet you can go to have a life. There are virtually unlimited number of planets. And I remember a quote from Carl Sagan, and he had said that there are more planets in the universe than there are grains of sand on the earth. And I was,
100 quintillion planets, I believe.
yeah, something I couldn't even pronounce. Ultimate, just unbelievable, limitless numbers of planets we can go to.
I wonder if those planets have their versions on the astral level as well. I mean, I kind of know the answer is yes, but I'm wondering if you had any thoughts or if you got an impression about that, because it would seem like the cosmos on the astral side would be the same size as the cosmos here, but I don't know. What do you think?
That's what I thought too. That's kind of what I think. I think they all have their own other sides.
And we could just describe that as a higher dimensional level, because the way I've seen the afterlife is that it's still this universe, but it's a higher dimensional version of it. So it's not like you're in a different universe so much as you're in a different frequency of the same place. So, our Earth is an Earth there, and then our moon is a moon there, our Venus is a Venus there. And whereas our Venus here may be lifeless, Venus there could be full of civilization because the rules are different. I don't know if you had any thoughts about that.
No, they didn't tell me anything else about that, but I just had the distinct impression that every one of those planets has its own other side that you can go to when you cross and finish off your life there.
And what about can someone, I wonder, from this, let's say the other side, Earth other side, could go visit the extraterrestrial version on that side too? Because we can't do that here, obviously. We can't visit an alien planet, but I wonder if we could interact with ETs on their higher dimensional frequency too.
Yes, I think we can. Because they did tell me that Earth is the hardest of all the planets. They said of all the planets, the people that come to Earth really come to Earth because they want to learn lessons by going through tough times. Because they said all the planets have different challenges, but the Earth plane is the hardest of all of them.
Oh, geez, I had a feeling.
Yeah. So and that's what goes on here. There's so many things that happen on Earth that don't happen on other planets, like starvation, for example, or wars, or corruption. All of that has been evolved. So Earth is the one planet that people come to when they want to learn something relatively quickly.
Yeah, no kidding. Geez. All right. Well, anyway, to continue forward then with what happens next.
Yeah. So next, after the planetarium, he took me to a round building. And when he walked in, it looked like a movie theater. And there were no seats, but it was round like a movie theater. And as I looked up on the movie screen, there were screens that formed a circle all around the entire inside, so that each section of the wall had a movie screen attached to it. So everywhere you looked in a circle, you could see these movie screens. And what it was is this is where people go when they review their lifetimes. So if you've just finished your life, you had your reunion, and then you go and you do a life review, this is where they take you. A beautiful looking theater. And when you walk in, when I got there, they started playing my life for me that I could see on these different screens. There was a screen playing that showed about my early childhood, One of the screens was showing my adolescence. Another screen was showing what I was doing in high school, in college, when I got married, when I had kids. All of these different screens were playing at the same time, and I could look and see different aspects of my life. And you could freeze them if you wanted to, just by saying stop. And that particular screen would stop, and you could look at it and review it. But your whole life is reviewed when you get back to the other side. And they do them in these kind of auditoriums or theater like places.
Now, is it a highlight reel or is it every embarrassing detail?
It's everything. Everything that you would think would be embarrassing is on there too, but nobody cares because it's just you and your guide. The only people that are with you are just you and your guide who watch these life reviews with you. So that was that building. The other one he took me to was very similar, and it was a it was a building, it was round, it was a theater, but that one had one screen. And this was a place you would go to if you wanted to watch your past lifetimes. And they showed me 3 of my past lifetimes. One of them was I was a monk and I had a shaved head and I was wearing a red tunic or a red robe. And my job was to teach the children who were in um, who were in the monastery. So I was a teacher. Another life they showed me, I was a fisherman. And this was somewhere in the Middle East. And I had a raggedy old boat. And I was a fisherman. I would toss my net over the side of the boat to try to catch fish. And that was a hard life. That was a subsistence life. It was difficult. And the other life they showed me was somewhere that took place in Eastern Europe, like Russia maybe, where I was a shoe pair. I fixed people's shoes in the town. I had a wheelbarrow and I was pushing people's shoes that I had fixed. So everybody was kind of poor. And so then instead of buying new shoes, we just had someone who would replace those shoes. And that's what I did. I fixed them.
Was that in the Soviet Union era, you think? Or was
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
you had a feeling when you said people are too poor to buy shoes? That's kind of seemed like a Soviet era type of thing to me. No,
Yeah.
and one
Absolutely.
of the reasons we know that these are, I mean, that this what you're saying to us is real is I mean, those are real other lives. I mean, statistically, I mean, people who when they have had experiences with past lives, and how many maybe 20, 30 billion people have been on this planet. I mean, that's other lives. In those eras, people were poor, people were fishermen, people repaired shoes. It wasn't like everyone gets to be Cleopatra in their past life. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And in fact, I used to do past life regressions back in California before I moved, and I had never met anybody who had ever been someone like Cleopatra. Everyone had just been ordinary people.
and that's the way it is in real life, and that's really what I zero in on in this community with afterlife topics is what's really going on, because unfortunately there is some flights of fantasy in this field. You know, people want to be Cleopatra. People want to have things that maybe didn't. You know, it's like real life isn't always what people's fantasies want it to be. But in my mind, though, you can. I mean, it is very courageous and outstanding to have been a fisherman, to have been somebody from the Soviet Union era. I mean that's tough stuff. And you think about especially what these people from other worlds, like you were talking about, what they probably think of people who have to go through an experience like that, because it's just outstandingly difficult. And but anyway, I don't mean to cut you off. If
Not at all.
what happened next?
Yeah, I'm almost done. The next thing I saw, he took me to what are called the sports fields. So those of you who love sports will love this. They had miles and miles of green sports fields that you could play any kind of sport you wanted to play, whether it was golf, soccer, lacrosse, football, baseball. Anything was available on these courts. You could play basketball in basketball courts, golf on golf courses. And you didn't have to ever get tired because the astral body doesn't have lungs. You don't get tired. you can actually play and in sports without ever getting tired. So I love playing soccer. So I can't wait till when I get back, I can play soccer again.
So what then if everyone's on an even playing field with physical abilities, what creates the competition? So what is it that would make one person win and somebody else not win?
Practice. It's just like on the earth. You practice to get better. Just because you go to the other side doesn't mean you're perfect in terms of what
Because
your
I think it
skills
would
are.
honestly, I think it would really suck if we were perfect. Because then if you can't practice, it's not fun. If you can't actually compete, it's not going to provide that meaning. So some people want they have conceptions about the afterlife that often I'm butting heads with people, especially on the forums. Say, we die, we become this formless orb of light. We're all knowing, we're perfect entities. And I think to myself, that's not what human souls typically prefer. I mean, I think that we
Yeah.
prefer to not be like that, so that we can test ourselves and we can experience things and we can compete or challenge ourselves and things like that. I think that if everybody became a perfect like orb of light when they crossed over, I think everyone would just come straight back here.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. That's exactly right. Nobody comes over there any better than when they were on the earth. You still bring your soul. It's still you when you cross over to the other side. You don't automatically become all knowing and all perfect. You're still developing. And the whole idea when you come back from your earth life is that you learned more, you grew more, and that you became more. And in fact, one of the things that is really imperative that my guide shared with me was that if anybody asks any questions about a lifetime, what they're most likely going to ask is, who have you helped? Who have you served? That seems to be the biggest question. Did you make a difference by helping somebody else? And that was one question that they tried to get through to me, that that's what's really important about the other side. And I'm almost done. For some of you, I know that this might be new or it may be old that you already know this, but our animals, our pets, are also on the other side. I saw my pets when I was growing up. I saw my cats and my dogs. They have souls also, and they keep them in these absolutely beautiful settings of mountains and meadows where they play all day long with each other, and they're young and they're healthy. They don't have cancer anymore. No diseases or cancer or old age exists on the other side. So when we cross over, not only do we reunite with the people that we lost, we also reunite with the people or with the animals that we lost, and they can be with us for the rest of eternity. So I thought that was an absolutely wonderful thing, because I grew up having so many animals, dogs and cats.
Yeah, I'm also aware a little bit of animals that continue their progress and may end up coming back as a human eventually. And but I
I've heard that too.
Yeah, and I had a cat who I had like this. What's strange is that I have a because I guess I think we all exist on different levels, different multidimensional levels. There's different levels of that world that you went to, and there's different levels of this world even. And so like when I'm on the astral plane, my old Siamese cat is still acts like a cat and doesn't, I mean, she was a very, very smart, very intelligent, wise animal, but she still is just like a normal cat. When I see her, she goes out and hangs out in the desert and comes home, and I pat her if I'm on that side. But I also had a separate experience where like I had a communication with her, and she was showing herself to me as like a young woman, and it was communicating in English and being like, this is a parallel life that I'm leading as well. So there was this very beautiful young woman, which was also the cat. So it's very interesting. But anyway, so how did things wrap up with your experience?
Okay, here's the last part of it. The very last part, I was transported to a field. It's more like a meadow where there were long grasses and flowers and trees, and it was beautiful. And I was by myself. At this point, my guide had left me, and I was by myself. And within a couple of seconds, a man appeared about 2 feet in front of me. He was about maybe 6'1", 6'2". He was so different than all the other people I had met. He was bright. He had a light that shined from inside of him coming out. So all I could see was him. I could see his hands, I could see his robe, I could see his sandals, and I could see his feet, but I could not see anything else about him. And he spoke to me and he said, "You must tell them there is no death." And right as soon as he said that, I was popped back into my body and I woke up on the operating table. And what he was telling me when he said, "You must tell them," he was telling me that I would need to tell people that I meet, tell them what you know, that there is no death. So ever since that time period, all those years ago, I have been trying to share that story with anybody who would listen to pretty much hopefully take away people's fear of death, because death isn't real.
Yeah, and it's a tough one reaching out to people. I mean, that's what, this whole podcast and show is about, and it's tough getting people who are normies involved in this. But one of the things I would like so much about your story, and I think that this is a very important thing, is the fact that you're analytical and that the experience for you was, it was based in details and based on a kind of like real life nature to it, and that's what people absorb, I think, much more easily sometimes than experiences which seem extremely esoteric and difficult to comprehend, difficult to pinpoint what's going on and where it's at and how things operate. And that's also because of people's minds work in different ways, and that's okay. But some people, maybe if they're very like right brain oriented, it's difficult to convey those details, to convey how things actually piece together. And I think when a lot of people on the outside, of the margins, on the normies, as I call them, when they hear a story like yours, it's much easier for them to wrap their minds around it, which I think is very important. But with that said, was that the conclusion of your story? Should we open up
Yeah,
to questions?
that was the conclusion. Yeah, they didn't give me an opportunity to stay. You know how some NDEers say that they're given an opportunity to stay or to go? I didn't get that. I was just sent right back.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have stayed there.
Well, we didn't want to stay permanently because then you wouldn't be here talking to us now.
Yeah, that's true.
So, all right. Well, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and open up to the patrons. I will ask maybe just for now one question each. We'll see how things go with the time. But if you're watching this on YouTube, this is Afterlife Topics in Metaphysics, where we have guests on like John Davis, and we explore the other side using level of critical detail, like it's been on this episode tonight. If you want to get involved, then you can subscribe to the channel, share this video. I think that'll be really important if you get this video out there, or maybe become a patron yourself by going to patreon.com/afterlife topics or afterlifetopics.com/university. Both ways, if you want to become a subscriber, helps pay for my new equipment and helps keep this operation going. And you can join this VIP group and ask guests like John questions yourself, or just communicate with me personally. I do basically free coaching for anyone who signs up at the $30 level as a patron. And anytime you want to talk to me, reach out to me, help with astral projection experiences, like I reserve time every day to help any subscriber who wants help with those things. So just sign up, and the links
Oh,
are.
that's wonderful.
I'm sorry, John.
That's wonderful.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks. So with that said, if I'm going to go ahead and open up to patrons. I know that there's been a couple of patrons in the chat who said that they went to the same place that John went to. I think referring to the Akashic Library. So that might be interesting to hear from. But otherwise, who would like to talk first? I will. Let's see. Actually, I'm going to give Susan the first opportunity because Susan was mentioning her experience. So, Susan, was there anything you wanted to ask or share?
I'm not sure if you can answer this question, John, but did you feel like you had the option of coming back to Earth, or you didn't have or you could stay? I mean, did you have a choice?
No. You know how a lot of times people are given choices?
Yes.
I was not given a choice. They didn't even ask me if I wanted to stay. I was just pushed back. As soon as he said that, "You must tell them there is no death," I was automatically transported back into my body. They didn't even ask me if I had a choice.
Okay. Well, what about the reincarnation part? Did you feel that was optional or you had to plan another life?
Nope, that is completely up to you. It's up to the soul. If the
Okay.
soul wants to come in for another reason, they can, but it's strictly up to them. God or guides or elders, nobody says you have to go back into life to do this. It's
Okay.
totally up to you.
All right. Thank you.
And Susan, you said you've been to a similar place as John?
Yes, I've just walked around. I didn't um I really didn't speak to anybody, but I was just walking around taking it all in, and I did see people in white robes. I
That
felt I was I felt that I was on a higher level though.
could have been the same level as John, could have been the same place, could have been Akashic Library number 16, number 20, number 25. Who
Yes.
knows how many of these places there are? Keely, did you have anything you wanted to share? Because I think you said something in the chat that you've been to similar places as John.
Yeah, the library sounded like somewhere I've been, that I remember. And when he said that you look out and there's a pond and there's like the willow trees and um did they have like the hanging moss on them and like people walking around in a circle like how you were saying it? Yeah, I can totally picture it. I don't know why,
Did
but
you see any hanging moss, John?
I didn't see the hanging moss per se, but I could see that the weeping willows were all hanging into the water.
yeah,
They were
yeah,
so long that they were just sitting on the surface of the water. It,
yeah.
it was
Is
just
that what you saw, Keely?
Yeah, I guess that's what it would be. Yeah.
it was beautiful.
But I remember the building, um, like you said, the columns, on the outside, and then just like a lot, rows and rows of books. And I remember talking to someone, but I mean, that's all I remember. But
Right.
it just, yeah, when you said that, I was,
And Keely, did you have any questions, or should we move on to Sunday?
well, I knew, oh my gosh, of course we're on the garbage planet.
Yeah.
So, it did. Okay, so your guide that was walking you around, did you get his name, like his name? And
Yes.
yeah. And
Yes. His name was Alan.
do you hear from him now, or
You
able
know,
to talk to him?
you know what? I never have. I had a dream of him once when my father-in-law passed away. They both came to me in a dream that very night. And
Um,
her dad said to me that just tell everyone I'm safe and that I'm okay. And
yeah.
my guide was with him. But that's the last time I've heard from him at all.
When you came back, did you have a feeling of like missing and longing and
Yeah,
loneliness?
in
You
fact,
did?
I went
Okay.
through I went through a very, very rough spot. I had severe depression for 2 months, and I had to get on medications. I had to
Yeah.
seek therapists and counselors because I didn't want to be back. The
Yeah.
feeling, the feeling you have over there is absolutely unbelievable to what it's like here. It's almost like being cut off from God while you're here on earth. When you're on the other side, you can feel God's love for you and how much he loves his creations and his children. But for some reason here on earth, we don't feel that
Yeah.
kind of love, that kind of compassion, that kind of acceptance, the unconditional love. And we're just bombarded by all the things that happen to us in the world that don't exist over there. So it was really hard for me to try to get back to realizing that I have to finish this lifetime before I get to go back again. So that was really a
Yeah.
hard time.
John, you may want to pull your camera down like 2 inches, just
Oh,
because
yeah.
you cut off from your mouth. Okay, now you
Yeah.
cut off from here, but it's okay. That looks fine. Okay, so I'm gonna, since I do need
Yeah.
to
Go ahead.
different people. Sunday, what do you want to ask?
Hey, John. I want to say thank you so much for sharing your NDE. My daughter died 2 years ago, and since then I've almost on a daily basis. I hunt for a new NDE, and yours is definitely one of the most detailed and heartwarming. I have a million questions, but I'm just going to try to just do two quick ones. One is, when you first woke up on the other side, you mentioned that you didn't know that you were dead until quite a bit later. So what did you perceive? Like, you know how sometimes when you have a dream and like there's pigs flying and weird stuff happening, but you don't really know who you are. You just accept whatever's happening. Was it more like that? Or did you know, my name is John, I have parents and I miss them, and what's happening to me? Where am I? This is strange.
No, actually, none of that even came to my mind. I completely forgot about the experience of being on the table in the operating room. That totally had left me, and I was completely engrossed in what my guide was showing me. It was so completely different and otherworldly for me that I totally forgot about my earth life, about why I was there having surgery. My first thought was, oh my gosh, this hospital is bigger than I thought it was. They have all these huge buildings. And then I realized this
I love
definitely can't be the same hospital. So I just listened to my guide, and it was only after I came back and I had all of these nurses and doctors looking down at me that I realized something had happened, that I'd actually died there. They told me I was dead for 7 minutes, and they had to shock me about 6 times before I came back. And something that's always interested me about that is, how did my guide know that I was going to be coming over like that in order to show me all the different things that he showed me? It was almost like it was planned. And I don't know to this day how he did that. But Sundai, I'm so sorry that you lost your daughter. I hope that from what I told you, that she's having a good time and that she's safe and that she's happy over there.
I appreciate that. I'm searching, and I'm keeping that as my focus. And one of the other questions I had was, a lot of NDEs talk about feeling a source of love that's mind bending and over powerful, and they just feel like bliss beyond bliss. I didn't hear in your story if that kind of love seemed to come over. Like, did you just understand that there must be some sort of God or higher power, or how did that happen?
Well, I had always believed that there was a God, even when I was a little kid going to church. And I didn't see God on the other side, but I felt his love and his presence. And that's why, if they had given me a choice, I would not have wanted to come back. I wanted to stay there where I could feel that. I had never in my life felt that kind of intense love and intense unconditional love that you feel there. You just feel that you can be everything that you were created to be, and that you were appreciated and loved far beyond you can possibly imagine. And I don't know why we don't feel that same love here. It's almost like we're cut off in a war zone, and you're cut off from your radio, because life is kind of like a battlefield, and you don't have that same kind of communication as you do when you're on the other side.
So, John, it almost sounds like that you had some perception that you were you, and you were aware that you were still you, but somehow you were disconnected from the John that was on Earth. You weren't worried about your parents. You weren't worried about, your girlfriend. You weren't worried about anything. You were completely now laser focused in the future and where you were, and you just kind of gently left that behind. Does that seem right?
Yes, that's exactly right. I was still very aware of who I was, that I was still John Davis, but I was having some kind of an extraordinary experience that I didn't want to end. And I didn't think of anything about my former life at all until I got back. I didn't think about parents. I didn't think about school. I didn't think about friends, anything. I just wanted to stay there.
But that could also be attributed to like the massive immersion of the experience of being pulled into an environment like that. Like maybe if you had more time to sit and think, in that environment, do you think you would have remembered, oh yeah, I have parents and I had something going on?
Yes.
Well, and the life review. I mean, it's not like you're gonna like. I think Sunday's worried that her daughter is gonna forget about her. You know what I mean? Like she's
They,
gonna be so busy, she's gonna forget about her life here.
they never forget us. They're with us all the time. In fact, what my guide told me, and I wish I had asked him this, but he said that if you speak out loud, they can hear you. So I speak to my friends and my father-in-law out loud all the time. I wish I would have asked if they could hear me inside my mind, because that I don't know. Because I pray a lot and I pray that they're happy, having a good time, and that they're safe and having fun. But a lot of times I'll talk when I'm driving in my car, and I just don't know if they can hear me inside my mind, like if I was praying.
Yeah, I do both just to be on the safe side. Isn't that funny?
There you go.
I think the first time that I traveled to the first time I went to Prague. Prague is such a beautiful city, and it looks like one of those places like you were describing, John, that it comes from that side and they rebuild it on this side, but it's not quite as magnificent. But Prague is such a beautiful city. I think the first time I was in Prague and doing a tour, I wasn't thinking about anything else. I wasn't thinking about my life back in the USA or anyone else. I was so immersed like about the cathedrals and the architecture. So I think it's a similar thing in a way. I mean, you get so immersed by what's happening around you, especially when you've just arrived. But then there are NDEs, a lot of NDEs where people, like especially parents, because there's such a strong bond between parents and children that they're like, this is all great, but it's 6 o'clock. I got to go back to the kids, and then they get
Yeah.
sent back. So I think that's one way of looking at it too. So anyone else have any questions? Jorge.
Yeah, hi, John. Thanks for sharing. It's been really, really amazing. I just wanted to ask if, obviously, after you came back and you mentioned like what you went through after, like because you've seen all this and experienced all this, have you ever got closer to that feeling? Like I know some people like they go through meditation and having or trying to induce OBEs and lucid dreaming, like get anywhere closer to that feeling, like anywhere where you think, like, well, this is kind of similar, or I can get there again, kind of thing.
The only thing that I've ever done that I've ever felt like I was somewhat close to that feeling was what you mentioned, was in meditation. It was about a year after I had my experience that I discovered meditation. And I used to be able to, when I was a kid, I used to be able to get out of my body like Cyrus can do and astral travel. And when I started meditating, I actually was able to start doing that again. And I did it a couple of times. But that was the times where I felt like I was closer to God and closer to that experience that I had all those years ago in my initial near-death experience. So meditation has helped me get to that level. I haven't been able to keep it for very long, but I have been able to feel that again through meditation.
Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome.
Barbara.
I wanted to ask you what the other people that you saw while you were there in that experience, what they looked like. Did they look like you, or were they multiracial and different appearances?
They looked like us.
Like who's us?
Just, it looked like if you were to walk out of on a busy street in a busy city and look around, that's what it looked like. People of all walks in life, wearing tunics, wearing robes, wearing jeans. There were men and women, different colors, different races, different ethnicities. Everything that was represented on Earth was also there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow. Okay. So, does anyone else have any questions for John?
I have more if no one else has any.
Well, let's see
Go ahead.
if
Go
anyone
ahead,
hasn't
Sunday.
asked yet has any. So if you have not asked John anything, you want to ask something, go ahead and jump in. Anyone? Going once, going twice. Okay, back to Sunday.
Okay, thanks, John. Did you feel like, I heard you say that it seemed like your guide talked in your left ear. Was there any telepathy or was it all audible talking?
As far as I could tell, it was audible talking. He was actually talking to me in my left ear. And that's an interesting question that I've asked a lot because I've heard other people say that it's been through telepathy. But in the orientation center, when I was watching that man who'd had that heart attack and that counselor was talking to him, I saw her mouth moving. And I was too far away to hear what she was saying, but she was actually talking to him. So that she wasn't using telepathy there. But
I think it's,
but
I
I
don't mean to
have heard
interrupt.
people
I'm
use
sorry, John, go ahead. Okay, yeah, what I was gonna say was I think it's it really is, it can be a combination of both. And that's one of the things that people sometimes pigeonhole the other side because they think, oh, it's all telepathy. But like in my experiences, I've seen both, and then I've talked to people about this, and they've described it as both. So I remember one time I was walking on a street and I was talking to a lady who was like on the other side of the block, but I was like, I could have a for communication like normally because it was through telepathy. But then when I got close enough to her, then I was talking verbally. So it's almost like people just interchange it. They know how to interchange it when it's most convenient, but it doesn't mean that the verbal dynamic is gone forever. Because there's been people, for example, on the forum being like, you know, the afterlife sounds great, but I'll miss never being able to sing again. I'm like, what? Who told you that? They're like, oh, some medium told me because we no longer have voices, so we can't sing anymore. And then as usual, you know, I had to respond and say this is all, as they say in England, bollocks. Uh, because I mean, it doesn't that doesn't. For example, the fact that telepathy exists doesn't mean that verbal sound waves stop existing. But sorry, I'll bring it back to you, John.
No, it's good. I think telepathy is real.
Yeah. John, I was wondering too, you know, Cyrus and many others in this group here and many others have had out of body experiences where they have found themselves like astral Los Angeles or astral London, those type of places that mimic Earth. Why or how do you think that plays into how we die, if you know? Were you given any information like, are they able to have those abilities, Cyrus and some of the people in the group, and visit that because they're not dead? They're able to go to these places, and then when you're actually dead, you go to more of where you're talking about? Or is it somehow interchangeable? You go to this orientation and then you get to go other places?
Well, from what I experienced and remember, the only people that have to go through orientation are the ones that are confused and forgot about what happens when they really die and what their real home is like. There are many that go through that don't even have to have orientation. They just come right through and go right to their reunions. Does that kind of answer your question?
Well, some people like Cyrus, when he astral projects, when he does his traveling, he might see his relatives and his loved ones that have passed, but it's not like a reunion. It's not like he's going to this meadow with flowers and built beautiful marble buildings and stuff. It's more like he's just living another life in a different dimension, almost exactly the same. Like it's Los Angeles or it's London. It seems so different to me than near-death experiences seem to have this angelic, gorgeous places with flowers and music and loved ones that are running. And then these out-of-body experiences seem so different. And I'm wondering how they connect somehow in the afterlife.
Yeah, that's a really good point. All I know is that there are different levels on the other side. The astral level, and there's just different levels above that, but I don't know very much about that. They didn't tell me anything when I had my experience about that.
I mean, I personally don't see a radical difference between what John describes in a, for example, astral Los Angeles. What I see is an administrative level, in this case, like a whole realm that is meant for new arrivals, that they really make it as beautiful as possible. But what happens when you get cut loose? Okay, it's because no one who has an NDE necessarily is cut loose and like, okay, now the world is your oyster, the multiverse, go wherever you want to go. Then the question is, where do people want to go? And I think a lot of people want to go back to something that was similar to their old life. And then you end up with, the astral equivalents of wherever it may be, Los Angeles, Tucson. Because, I mean, John described it in his NDE. You basically were saying that like a castle is first built there and then it ends up here. A lot of stuff that is there is eventually makes its way here. And that could be the case with cities. I was in an astral version. I was in Ethiopia, and then there was the capital is Addis Ababa, and so I went to the astral version. It was much more amazing looking than the kind of rundown city that I was in. It was all marble with like columns and statues and like people walking around who are like hundreds or thousands of years old, And that was the astral version of one city, which was Addis Ababa, and I think a lot of it comes down to like what is someone's lifestyle going to be like when they cross over, because eventually when you leave orientation, where are you going to go next? And that's up to us. John, what do you think?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't have an answer for that. I know that when people cross over, they go through orientation and they go through the reunion, they immediately start going back to doing the things they love to do. And sometimes when you're in life, you don't have the opportunity of doing the things that you love to do. So when you cross over, all of your time is free again, because time doesn't exist like it exists here. So if you always loved to paint, that's what you do on the other side. You do more of that more painting and the things that you love to do. So sometimes people, when they're on the earth, they just have to do things to pay their bills. They don't necessarily have the ability to have a job that they love. But on the other side, you can, when you get back, you just kind of start your existence where you left off, hopefully with a little bit more wisdom and knowledge and learning from having experienced that last life, because that's where we all come in to learn more and to become more.
And I think that's where it intersects with other planes and gradients. I think near-death experiences, it just doesn't typically develop into the point of where someone is going to like go into whatever the new city, home, or community they want to go into is, right? So if someone had basically got fully died and they hadn't gone, some of the NDEs are introductory experience. Like John, your NDE was a experience of being shown the introduction to dying, right? And so, but we don't have access except through an out-of-body experience to look into someone's life after they've already been on that side for our conception of time, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And that's, I think, where we look into kind of the astral community, astral earth, and what's going on for them on a day-to-day basis. And that's often the perspective of OBEs compared to the perspective of the NDE, which is the new arrival. So we have a message in chat. Let me just see what it is. So who's asking this question about Sunday? Is that you asking about his past lives?
Yes, what I was just wondering is, John, it seemed like you said, you remember that you were John, but then at that scenario when they showed you that you were a shoemaker and a fisherman, you had some vague attachment to that. But when you were shown, you were more closely attached to this John character. Is it possible to theorize then that every time you go into another life, that you just keep the identity of the last life?
No, you keep your full identity. Like if you were to go into a life right now, into a lifetime, you'd still be Sunday. You have, but a lot of times when you come into a life, they wipe your memories, kind of like amnesia, so that you can actually experience what it is your soul came to experience and to pass those tests. But when you look at yourself in a past lifetime, you know it's you. Even though you don't look anything like you look right now, you know that that person in that life is you. So when they were showing me them, I had absolute memory and recall, maybe because I was on the other side at that point, that those were lives that I was living. But I didn't know at the time that that was John in that life as a shoe peddler or as the fisherman. But when I was looking at those past lifetimes from the other side, I knew that they were my past lifetimes and that was me. Does that help?
Okay. Yeah, so you kind of identify as a higher self type, that it's a collection of a whole bunch of different people, but maybe because you just died as John, you were kind of you were more John at that time of your afterlife experience than you were the shoemaker or the fisherman.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
Or were you John the entire time, like through all the lifetimes?
No, the first explanation was correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a complicated one. We know we've covered it a bit on the channel before, but it's I think even complicated for them to fully explain. But it gets very multidimensional with parallel or incarnated lives that almost like fractals. It's it gets kind of crazy. We'll go maybe one more question. Anyone else have anything they want to ask John?
So many questions.
Anyone else?
I do, if no one else has.
Well, let's
go for it, Sunday, and then I have somebody else go. I have a question, but
okay, then Sunday, then Keely, then we'll wrap up.
Okay, so last question, John. I'm sorry, I'm just so fascinated, and I'm just so grateful for your experience. It's been a journey for me to try to get some communication with my daughter. What advice do you have, since you've had such an unbelievable experience? How can I connect with my daughter better? Like, how can I meditate all the time. I don't have out-of-body experiences. I really have put a tremendous effort, but I feel like there's some wall blocking me. What can I do to break that barrier, to get closer to my daughter and my loved ones?
Something that I used to do was a meditation, just like what you're talking about, but I would have a focal point. I would create in my mind, and this takes a little bit of practice, but create in your mind a place that you can go to where you feel peace, like a gazebo somewhere, or a gazebo that you can create in your mind in a field or around flowers, but in your mind, create some kind of a gazebo where you're sitting, and that you can have your daughter, visualize your daughter sitting across from you, and make it so real in your mind that she can see it too. And she can come in and sit and talk with you. That happened to me twice in my life, and I did it through meditation. It wasn't something that was easy. It took a long time for me to be able to do that. But it sounds like you've been meditating for a while. But if you can create one place and over again create this gazebo, I think she can be able to come into that and talk to you at some point.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you very much. I know just what to do.
Good advice.
Okay.
Keely, what was your question?
Well, I was just more of a statement, I guess. The feeling of loss and whatnot. I felt that feeling on many occasions, like when I've woken up from out-of-body experiences, but like I can only hold on to that feeling for a second and then it's gone. But I will feel like a sense of loss throughout the day, and like just like not myself, right? Like, I'm not whole, I guess. And then I'll kind of return to normal, but it's a continuing thing that has happened for many years. And I don't, so like, have you ever felt that again? Like
Have you ever felt, maybe I can articulate, maybe
I'm not articulating
accurate, but have you ever felt like maybe you were asleep and you were on that side and then you don't remember, but you feel like this loss that you're back on Earth?
No, I've never felt that in a sleep state. I haven't been able to do astral projection in a long time.
Okay. And how old were you? I didn't get that.
I was 21 when it happened.
You're 21.
For
Yeah.
some reason, when you're talking, you may have mentioned it, but maybe I missed it. But the whole time I thought you were like 14 years old. I don't know why.
Oh yeah, I've had so too. I didn't know. Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that's it because we're at an hour and a half, so probably a good time to wrap up. So thank you to all the patrons for asking really interesting questions. John, how could people reach you, and what do you have anything going on next?
They can reach me through Facebook under John J. Davis. And I need to get a presence on the web. I don't have a website yet, but I'm going to get one set up. But nothing's going on. I just share my story with whoever I can and just do what they told me to tell people there is no death. And that's what I've been doing this whole time.
Well, there you go. You're doing a good job of it, John. So thank you for
Yeah.
coming on the show. And who knows? Maybe we'll have you back sometime to chat more. Maybe on a casual basis. Who knows? But
That would be great.
It is great having you around, also in the community as well. So thank you for making posts on Afterlife.
Thank you, Cyrus. Thanks for having me on
So
your
grateful.
show.
It was a wonderful, wonderful experience to listen to.
Yes.
Thank you, John.
Thank
It
you.
was nice. It was a pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you.
I guess we'll wrap up now. So, and thank you, YouTube audience, for watching this. And of course, you can get involved yourself at Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics on Facebook or on MeWe or on Reddit, and pick up some books like Understanding Life After Death, or The Afterlife and Beyond. Those are at afterlifetopics.com if you want to grab something to read. And I guess that's it. So thank you, everybody, for coming out. Thanks again to John and the patrons. And with that, I'll see you all on the next video.
Thank you, Cyrus.
All right, thank you.
you.